Hi all, I have another amazing game of Leela Chess to show you. Leela ID 11250 against Stockfish 9 playing black. Fast and furious, 40 moves per 2 minutes with a 2-second increment per move. Book moves, knight f3, d5, e3, knight f6, end of book here. Stockfish chooses d4. We have e6, c4, bishop e7, bishop e2. Now d takes c4, and usually bishop takes c4 is played, so this is the standard move. Bishop takes c4. There's a stem game here. Halkias against Mayer, for example, ended in this stem game ended in a win for black after the isolated queen's pawn was put on the board. So that's pretty standard continuation, though, to just take with the bishop here. But we have the slightly unusual knight bd2. And against this slightly unusual way of recapturing on c4, Leela decides to play b5, which ordinarily is pretty risky to try and cling on to the pawn. Let's see what's happening in this particular scenario, though. a4, c6, a takes, c takes, and now b3. Leela plays actually c3, so it is gaining a tempo on the knight c3, but giving the pawn back. So this is very interesting. It's unbalanced. The pawn structure is unbalanced here. So here, after knight c4, we have bishop b4, so clinging on to that pawn like this. Both sides castling. Knight e1, a5, willing to give up the bishop on the move like knight d3 or c2 to just cement a protected passed pawn, potentially. Knight c8. That's right, knight c2, queen b8, protecting b4 a bit more. Bishop a3. Here, the forcing move needs to be checked out. Knight takes b4. Does this do anything? Not particularly. It just gives black a protected passed pawn, basically. There's no big deal here. Black would have a nice edge. So that's one thing to be concerned of, not actually making this even worse, this c3 pawn, from a white perspective. So queen b7, f3, rook fd8, e4. So this situation, what does it actually offer black? White seems to have a very solid looking pawn center here. What is the big deal about this position? Okay, the c3 pawn isn't going anywhere. It's blockaded clearly by the knight on c2 as well. So the queen's kind of blunted. The pressure on the center is negated. There's a solid pawn here protecting e4. Okay, black plays h5 though. This is like a form pawn potential attack, a form pawn installation, or to disrupt white's pawn structure. So very, very interesting. h5 is facilitated here. Queen e2 is played. We have h4, yeah, going for the form pawn. Queen f2, and now h3. Now, white took that pawn, actually. Let's have a look at g3 for a moment. Knight b8. This should be an even position after simplification here, even though there's that pawn there. It's too dangerous to take this pawn because of if taking here. Let's have a look at this. Knight takes, queen b7, and then taking on b3. That's fine for black. Black's actually better there. So let's have a look. Rook a1, though, queen b7. This should be even, this position. So yeah, so g takes h3, a bit more materialistic. G takes h3, getting rid of any form pawn for a moment. And one slight downside here is this f4 square. Can a knight actually be rerouted to sort of exploit the knight on f4? So, you know, going from there to there and there to there. So we have, yeah, this f4 square is maybe a potential issue here. We have knight f8, knight e5, and now it looks as though knight g6 is totally prevented. Is there any sense in doing this? Isn't black's pawns going to be just doubled? What would be the compensation there? Surely that would be crazy. Well, what do you think Leela did play here then? Or did she play knight g6? positional judgment. Actually, she did play knight g6. Yeah, it seems a little bit strange. White took. Now we actually have bishop takes a3 first before recapturing on g6. Rook takes a3. If the knight goes back instead, then bishop d6 should be an even position here. It should be an even position. So rook takes a3. F takes. Queen e3. Rook dc8. King h1. Now knight h5. So this does use that f4 square, that slight weakness. h4 is played. There's some interesting lines here. If white tries to play f4 in this position, there is pressure on this f file. For example, rook f8, and actually here, say king g1, to try and unpin this pawn. g5 appears to be very, very strong in this scenario. For example, f takes is horrible. That f file with the rook on a3 is very dangerous for white's king after queen b5 threatening queen f1 checkmate. So for example here, then b3 drops. So there's simultaneous attacks on b3 and the king side here. Black would have a big advantage. If we look at this position again, yeah, f takes. It's just, yeah, it's just very, very dangerous after check, queen b5. If queen f2, so if the queen goes to f2, let's have a look at that. Then there's just queen takes g5 check, and then check here is mating, basically. So f4 is really too dangerous, it seems, because of this idea, rook f8 and g5. So we have actually h4, king h7. Black does seem to be putting more pressure potentially now on the f file, the king holding g6. Rook g1, queen f7, rook g5, joining actually the other rook for an attack on this pawn. So both rooks coordinating on the poor a5 pawn. Is this a big problem? Where is the compensation for black? We have a counter attack on the b3 pawn now. Yeah, if king h8, white would certainly be keen maybe to take on a5 with a small edge. So rook ab8, putting the pressure on b3. We have rook e5 now. This does put the brakes on black, of course, playing e5. If knight e1 as an example, then e5 hits b3, and there is a dangerous pawn there as well. So this situation is horrible for white. White wouldn't really want to unblockade anyway. So rook e5, keeping a lock and key, it seems, on black's pieces. Now we have knight f4. So knight on f4, knight f4, as has been commented by some grandmasters. So rook does take on e5. e5, very interesting now. Look at the pawn situation. 1, 2, 3, 4 against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 pawns down. Stockfish chooses d5, which does mean that knight is now reinforced nicely with that pawn. Let's have a look at d takes e5 instead. Then here the center looks a bit scary after rook d8. For example, then there's queen takes b3, and this, black's getting actually a big advantage. That pawn is very dangerous here, and white's pawns are pretty shattered. So that doesn't look too promising. On rook takes e5, then rook takes b3. This should be an even position actually. This position, white has a tactical shot with rook h5 check, which can force basically an equal position by a perpetual check. That pawn's not going anywhere. There's going to be perpetual check scenarios. So yeah, it's interesting though. d5 was played, and now queen d7, which has an idea of queen h3. Yeah, the queen coming into h3 here is dangerous, because then queen f1 and also looking at g2. So okay. So let's see. Queen f2 was played. On rook a7, queen h3. Let's have a look. Queen f2 here, guarding g2 and f1. There's knight d3. After queen g2, queen takes. Black actually gets into the driving seat here, it seems, in this scenario. Even if it goes to an ending, this is just a big pass pawn, knight on f4. Black's got all the trump cards emerging. So queen f2 was played. Queen h3, king g1, rook c7, rook a8. On rook 5 to a4, this one, queen d7 is actually threatening rook takes b3 here. So for example, as well as knight h3 check. So if white has to do something about that, bang, rook takes b3 is clever, with a big advantage. You know, if takes, then takes here. So okay, so rook a8, queen c8, rook takes, queen takes. We have queen e3, queen b5, king f2, rook c8, b4 is played now. Queen c4. Black seems to be in the driving seat, so protecting that c3 pawn from the attack of queen and rook. And actually, white is in big trouble here. The knight can't move without allowing c2. The pieces seem pretty awkward, as well as b4 dropping. So actually, white seems to be pretty stuck here, and actually just gives up the h pawn. Yeah, it seems to be a very, very difficult position to play. What is actually happening here? There's also possibilities, say king g1, of check and then knight d4. So white just gives up this pawn, h5. That's taken. King g1. And now h4, the form pawn is going to be installed now. Thanks very much. King g1, rook f8, as though the rook might even swing now. This is immune, this pawn, because of knight e2 check. So we have queen f2, queen d3. Yeah, black's totally in the driving seat now, pinning that knight. This is devastating stuff. King f1. We have knight d3, and white is just crumbling now. The pressure here is immense. There's rook takes f3 threatened. White basically essentially gives up with rook a7. Rook takes f3, crashing through, taking the knight off. d6, c2, and black is just a piece up. The game ended here. Both engines thought white was busted. For example, with rook f6, d7, check, knight d4, check, and then rook d6. So that holds c2, and white can't really do anything with the pawn. And basically, you know, rook takes d7 otherwise is happening here. So this is just hopeless. Let's go back to the final position. So a very, very nice game with the Queen's Gambit kind of accepted in a delayed manner. And Leela managed to get some very interesting trump cards there. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.